paying jobs for hardworking Americans who are now in danger of being displaced. How does that affect the economy? And we are a service oriented economy increasingly. Well, in order to maintain that economy, you need people who are working to get a paycheck in order to feed the economy. And we are seeing fewer manufacturing jobs, although the president claims he's trying to change all that. He's been trying for some time, including during his first term of office. So why do I jump to the question, should it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? Isn't that going a little far? Perhaps so. But in China, they have just passed legislation that makes it illegal for AI to take a person's job. And they can be self-driving, but you can't displace a truck driver with a self-driving truck. That truck driver has a right to hold his or her job. So I know in many respects you have heard your moderator being critical of China for a lot of its policies. But I think that they're way ahead of the curve with this one. I'm all for protecting people's jobs, if at all possible. I'm not anti-technology, but I've always been in favor of protecting people's jobs if possible. Just anecdotally, when I was a reporter in Detroit, I worked for the all news radio station, WWJ, which is the premier radio station now, I think, in Detroit. And there's a thing called live reads when it comes to commercials, and they have greater impact because it sounds like the anchor, who is part of your daily life, is endorsing what he or she is reading, even though it is not an endorsement. And I told them when they asked me to anchor, I can't anchor. Well, you have the ability to anchor. No, I will not anchor. Why? I will not read. I will not do a live read for robotics because they actually were advertising on the radio station to a very, very, very narrow segment of our audience, advertising for robotics to replace people working the assembly lines in the auto industry. So they were looking to the board members and to the decision makers of the big three automakers, which comprise less than 1% of the total audience of the radio station. But it was an important buy because it was an all-news radio station. So typically people who are in executive positions would tune in to get caught up on the news, especially during their daily commutes. So while it was wasted on the ears of a lot of people, it was impactful for that small target audience. But my argument was, well, what about all these other people who are working in the auto industry, and they're going to be driving to work or driving home from work and hearing Gary reading an ad for robotics that would potentially replace their job? I said, no, I refuse the promotion. It's considered promotion to go from reporter to anchor. I turned it down because I just could not stomach the idea of doing a live read. If they wanted to hire somebody to pre-produce those ads, I was all for it. But they were paying a premium for the anchors to read the ads. So that's my bias coming from the Iron Belt Midwest, you know? My bias is jobs should be protected if at all possible, while recognizing that technology marches forward. I understand that. But the question of me losing my job to AI, I guess, it's actually possible. I think it's possible to replace a moderator of a gathering like this with AI. I think it's possible. I think I mentioned this once before. I was part of a fledgling think tank, and the head of the think tank put together a one-sheeter and gave it to these podcasters who then discussed the think tank and what we were intending to do based on the one-sheeter he presented. And then he sent to me the podcast, and it was a man and a woman discussing what we were doing and who the principals were and what our goals were and the positive aspects of it and the negative aspects of it. But guess what? It wasn't until after I heard it that he told me I wasn't listening to human beings. I was listening to AI generated voices. And if you stop and think about it right now, you could go to any AI program and you can point and you can say, what are the benefits and the deficits for AI taking people's jobs? Should it be made illegal? And it'll print it out in like 5 seconds with pretty good specificity and well analyzed arguments for both sides. Well, now all you got to do is program it so that you got two people discussing this in a podcast kind of setting, alternating the paragraphs. Well, yeah, that's true, but blah, 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 that kind of thing. I don't think it's that hard. Well, this isn't a paying job, and I guess it's not the end of the world if I'm replaced here by AI, but I certainly wouldn't want to be replaced at my real paying job by AI, and I don't think many of you would. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you to hear what you have to say about the question, should, as it now is in China, it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? Marshall, you lost your hat. I'll give it back to you here in a second. Scott, followed by Alan.
Well, Gary, I mean, look, I think, is it Trumpeter or whatever, the economist that said, I'm getting the name wrong, sure, but the concept of creative destruction, right? I mean, look, how many horse and buggy makers and repairmen lost their jobs with the car? I mean, should we have preserved those jobs or not? So this is part of what technological advances do. They're always disruptive. Nobody would think that the car, for all its disruption of things and certain kinds of industries, wasn't a net plus, right? I mean, Scott Galloway is he calls himself an AI optimist, not an AI apocalypticist. That he thinks it'll actually create more jobs. But regardless, the cat's out of the bag, right? And so we're not going to go back, and we're not going to make laws about it not replacing jobs. I don't think. I mean, I think we'd have to have a radical social shift for something like that to happen, right? And I think, I don't think. And I mean, we really could argue, should that happen? Again, creative destruction is always disruptive, but usually, almost inevitably, these sort of advances create widespread gains for us all. So, I mean, even when it's tough to see it in the short run. Second, I just want to go back to Plato's Phaedrus, right? I mean, the Phaedrus is, of course, a dialogue where Socrates, Plato's mouthpiece, tells a story about Thuth and Thamos. Thuth is the Egyptian god of invention. He goes to Thamos, the king of Egypt, and he says, "Look at this thing. I've got
Thoth.
writing." And what's that? Thoth. Am I getting it wrong? Thuth. It's not. It's not. Thuth,
Yes,
it's
the god's name is Thoth or Thoth.
Thoth. Okay. Yeah. So Thoth. Thoth comes and says, "Look, I got writing. It'd be amazing. It's going to be the greatest thing in the world. It's going to make people smarter. It's going to increase human capacity." And Thamos says, "No, it's not. It's going to weaken memory. It's going to, writing can't answer questions. You lose control of the audience in a way that the live instructor doesn't. People can read things and misread things. It creates false confidence, right?" I remember Tom Gillespie, the president of Princeton Seminary, told an incoming class, "Remember, an ignoramus is somebody is somebody that doesn't know something you just read." And Thamos goes on to say that real philosophy is dialogical. I think that's Plato's point. But Plato here is being dialectical himself. I mean, he's not saying writing is all bad, because he can't be saying that, right? Because he's doing it in a written dialogue. But what he's saying is there are always dangers to technological advances. There are always warnings. There are always things that we can be cautious about. But ultimately, despite all of Plato's warnings, we would say writing and reading is a net gain, right? over oral culture, right? It's a huge gain, disruptive as it is, and despite all the sort of critiques and false confidence and pseudo wisdom and things that Plato points out that writing can create, a lot of which can be said exponentially more for AI. All that being said, I think it's going to probably be a net gain, but one that's going to be incredibly disruptive. And it will both benefit us and traumatize us, like many and most major technological advances do. So, thanks, Gary. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm coming to you live once again from Marion Golf Club at the U.S. Amateur, my friends. Take it away.
So, Scott, let me frame the question personally for you, if you don't mind. You're a minister. And I know, we've actually discussed it in the past, you and I, that there are people, men and women of the cloth, who have, because of laziness probably, I don't know, have had AI produce their sermons for them. Now, that's not displacing them, but why do I need you at the pulpit? Why don't I just have a computer at the pulpit or a hologram at the pulpit giving me an AI-generated sermon based on this week's reading of the Bible or the Torah or the Quran?
Because most congregations are small. That might work. I don't know. That might work in a mega church where most people don't have a connection with the person up front. So, by the way, Modi in India campaigned by hologram a lot of places. So, no, but I don't know. No, I don't think that. I think despite people are cribbing with AI and stuff for sermons, there's a relational component that AI will not replace with clergy, right? And again, in a mega church, you might be able to do this to replace this a little better, because Joel Osteen, I mean, gosh, I bet you an AI could do better than Joel Osteen. But by and large, no, I don't think.
Yeah, but that AI would not look as good as Joel.
He doesn't look bad. I don't like his smile, and I don't like his hair, but he can bench press a remarkable amount for a guy that thin. Yeah, no. So I just don't. I don't think. I think there are a lot of things that it won't replace, and there are things it will replace. And again, creative destruction. That is out of the barn. I mean, I would recommend a book for everybody. It's a little old. I think it's written in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, by Neil Postman, called Technopoly. He wrote a very famous book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. And a book he wrote after that was called Technopoly. And his view of a technopoly was when he said, normal technology is when a culture, the culture drives the tools, right? The culture actually kind of sets the agenda for the tools. He said technopoly is when the tools drive the culture, drive and create the culture. Now, we might be in a technopoly. That's something we'll have to deal with, right? I mean, But we're not enough of a traditional society. If we were a traditional sort of pre-modern society with sort of sacred authorities and things that could put horses back in barns, you might be able to resist some of this. But that's not with the society we are, right? It's just there's no putting the horses back in the barn. They're out the barn, my friend. And so, yeah, I think again, I think it's going to be a net positive, but there will be a lot of casualties along the way, and that sucks. And but that's what technology and technological advances displace people. It's inevitable.
Just remember that while cars replace horses, they do not replace Teamsters. Alan, Alan, followed by Marshall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Gary. You're not gonna be exchanged for anything. You're not the. How do you say it? What is the word?
I am unique, but not necessarily everybody's
that.
cup of tea.
Above that, you are unique plus, and no one can replace you, not even an AI. But AI, I think, is danger to the technology. AI is a danger to the same people they doing it. I remember years ago I had very dear friend, which I still have friendship with him. We are 45, 50 years old friend from college to now. And he was a programmer, and they had a papers he signed. The program he writes, it cannot be replaced other employee. That was the deal was, but that deal went out of the picture long ago. So the only people, I think Indian, they are more than anybody else. Indian from India, they are the more people in danger than life, because they are the one, they are in the high tech. There are certain jobs it cannot be. I don't care how far, the individual sales shop, I don't think so can be replaceable by AI. But Scott is right. This is the life is going. Later you ask someone, how are you? First thing, his finger goes on his phone and it put a question to Google, how the hell I am, and get the answer and pass it to you. Without that, is lost. So it is what it is. What can we do? Yes, they are, but there are some changes in the past, but didn't replace human. But this thing is they trying to replace human, and that's nothing new. Humans' value is going out of the picture. If human life doesn't mean anything, and if they stay hungry, they stay hungry. They bang in the chest. The social democrat, they bang in them chest. We're gonna throw a piece of bread and a glass of water in front of you, and you stay sharp, and you have no right to say anything. That's what it's this life is going through. Look at how much right you lost in last 20, 30 years, gradually, step by step. Now we got to the point of they taking a big giant and human, they cannot do anything. That is the end of my life. I'm glad I had a good run. I'm glad AI comes in and ain't not gonna affect my life. I'm pretty much set, and hopefully these guys stop dragging his feet up. But I understand the gentleman tried to buy my shop. He is facing the same obstacle every one of us. He wants to transfer some of his asset from, retirement, but they obstacle after obstacle. I do understand, but if it does, I'm set for life, Gary. I ain't worried about AI or a me I or an NI or any kind of I. I'm done. Back to you. Hopefully,
So
all
Alan,
the
I was laughing when you said, you have to go to Google to ask, how are you? And I know that was supposed to be a joke, but in actual fact, now with ChatGPT, you can sync your ChatGPT with your Apple Health application, which is monitoring your health. And so actually, you can go to ChatGPT now and say, "How am I?" and get an answer. So there you go.
That's exactly what my point is. I mean, having the ear and eye on your cell phone, this is not new. I practiced it, I tested it many times. Me and a friend sitting here, and deliberately we talk about some product. Guess what? In the 5 minutes, our cell phone will get bombarded with the email. Our text is all bombarded with the email about that particular.
Right. And they claim that they're not listening.
Oh, they're not listening, but we did it.
Try doing this if you don't have a cat. Periodically say around your phone, kitty litter, and see if you get advertising for pets. Thanks, Alan. Marshall, followed by Agent.
No, I don't think AI will displace humans, and no, I don't think it should be illegal. We would just be getting in the way of the free market, and when we finally decided to come back to it, it would be that much worse. We gotta let the free market decide that stuff is no longer viable. You can't do it anymore, so we gotta do something else. And at least if you do it that way, the business cycle is good with trying to make money. If you do it the other way, at least in my understanding, you'd be pushing an artificial restriction upon the business community in a way that doesn't make a ton of sense.
But Marshall, it will displace some people, right? And we got to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. In the same way that
it creates opportunities.
In the same way that the printing press displaced scribes, right, from copying things by hand. It displace people from doing those sorts of jobs
Marshall, my friend, it's already doing it. There is a magazine, I've been getting it for last 20 years. It called Cigar Snob. Okay, this magazine been famous with find the most beautiful people, a woman around the world, and pay well to have picture half nude and it's a very sexy picture, and they have cigar in their hand. Guess what? Last week, this gentleman, his name is Mark. He used to work in the oil industry, but since things went down, he has been unemployed. He was sitting here. He read that and turned around to me, says, "Hey, Alan, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "It says right here, all these picture is generated by AR. That's for you. Those women, they were making money off them body. They cannot do it again. It's not far from everybody else. Come on. I am an eyewitness. I hope I was thinking like
I'm saying is like artificially holding up a market because it's good for humans means that when we finally have leadership that doesn't want to do that, there will be a really big retraction and a really big cut for people who make their money doing stuff that AI could do. It's better to let AI make those jobs obsolete than it is to continue them around. Because when you finally decide to get right with the business cycle is going to tell you, no, you can't do that. This is no longer profitable, right? And like that, I'm not saying everything should be judged by profit because I don't think it should be. But I am saying that I think that if you are to artificially stop AI from taking jobs, there's going to come a reckoning point in the future where the jobs that have been saved in AI come together, and the people who would have lost their jobs initially will just lose their jobs then. And so it's better to lose your jobs now than wait a year and a half or 2 years because we propped up the market than to have you lose now. I'm not saying there should be some sort of a universal basic income because I don't think the United States can afford that at all. I think if you cut most of the social programs, you can make a try at it, but you'd have to cut most of the social programs. But I think if you outlaw AI from taking these jobs, then when you get somebody in power who wants to go by the business market, all those jobs are going to be trashed anyway. So you might as well cave to the market and find something else to do than wait for protectionism and the market to collapse on you 20 years later.
The problem is people who are, not everybody's retrainable, and they're not necessarily jobs to retrain them for. And if you're a professional model, to use Alan's example, you make your money off of your photogenic abilities, and you have no other skills. Now what do you do? I think it puts people in a bad position. And so
I think it does too. I'm not sure what to do other than what I suggested. I don't think you can afford protectionism when somebody's going to come along and make the market do what it needs to do. All those people will lose their jobs then versus now. Better to do it now and cave with the market than artificially inflate it and have to wait till later. And it could be a lot more disruptive, in particular for people who pin their making a living in their families based on those sorts of jobs. I'm at the very, 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 very edge of my knowledge on economics. So if people disagree with me, please tell me.
Well, I'm not an expert on economics either, but I do know that the last time in my lifetime that I saw this kind of a revolution, it was the exporting of jobs to other countries by multinational companies who could make more money by paying lower wages overseas and shipping the goods back here. And this is exactly the pressure point that plummeted Donald Trump into his first presidency. So certainly that strikes a nerve with the American people. And this is going to just accelerate the loss of jobs in the United States. And I don't know in the aggregate that it is good. Maybe it is. Maybe it creates enough jobs to counterbalance all that. I don't know. That I don't know the answer to. Agent followed by Linda.
Well, Gary, I have a master's degree in economics, but I would not use that as authority that I know of what I'm talking about in economics at all, or especially when it comes to AI and everything. I can tell you I'm very close to. I work with AI for many hours each day now. I'm on the front. AI was created by technologists, by programmers, and what's the first thing they really tuned it for is actually coding, which is how which is basically my industry. So I'm really in the middle of being highly disrupted by the thing that people in my industry created to just put ourselves out of work. And it's always been the thing that that would have always been the top of my list. It's like, oh, if I could create an artifact, please take this burden off of me as soon as possible. And maybe that's a good way to look at this. We're all being unburdened from our, what must be, unburdened by what has been. We are being unburdened from our service-based responsibilities by this technology, and that is very disruptive. People have invested. The U.S. is one of the top wealthy countries in the world, and a lot of that wealth has become service-based. People have oriented their whole lives for decades to gain the skills to produce high-value services, and now this massive deflation in the cost of the value of services means it's basically they don't have much to offer to the broader economy now, and they can be augmented by AI. Everyone's much more efficient who was providing services, but actually capturing that value, feeding your family, putting these things are all being massively disrupted. So, you could zoom out a little. Elon Musk, he's now rebranded. I mean, he's clearly very into AI, building the largest chip manufacturing plant in the world right now. He's investing tens of billions in that, the TerraFab in Texas. He has created two of the biggest AI companies, and one of which he still owns, XAI, part of SpaceX. Anyway, he says that it's going to make all forms of human economics irrelevant going forward. And he's rebranded, for instance, Tesla to the mission or the purpose is sustainable abundance. He thinks the solution or the direction that everything's heading for is not just universal basic income. That's very passé now. That was possible with just our old service-based economy.
Hello?
He's talking about universal high income. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, somebody's mic got stuck open. Go ahead.
Sorry. So yeah, we're moving towards, if everything goes according to plan with robotics, with AI, we're moving towards, an incredible level of material abundance. But still, yeah, what the average person's need or their ability to contribute scarce, valuable things to the rest of, the economy is going to be pretty much wiped out. So either we give people some kind of ownership stake or we give them some kind of handout stake or whatever, but we are going to have to upend all of what we have been used to for how people exchange, how people create value or capture value, and feed themselves and so forth. That's all going away. Is the direction this is heading. This is very scary for people. This is just, and temporarily, this will put a squeeze on a lot of people, as it is doing to me. But it's going to a much better place. I think people need to be confident about that. I'll just zoom back into what sparked this, the Chinese. This is obviously a short-term solution. They're all in on AI. They're all in on robotics. But it's it's just a convenient, China's good at like practical ways of dealing with problems. And rather than in the next year or two, or have to rather than force the government to deal with the redrafting of the social contract and the economic system and all the unemployment, they're kind of putting a Band-Aid on it by creating this law, which is to say, yes, please, everyone go all in on AI, but you, the companies, you're stuck with it. If you're used to paying an employee, you're stuck with it. It's your problem to sort these people out, and it's your opportunity to find something productive to do with them. You're not going to make them a ward of the state yet. And, please deal with them for a bit longer. I don't think this is like this is not like, I hear what you're saying. Like, there are good arguments to make for saving jobs and whatever. But it also adds a lot of inefficiencies. If you look at Europe, even if you look at a lot of unionized companies, my uncle used to work for GM in Detroit, and he would talk about the job pool. And it's like, there was all this resistance to bringing in robots to replace jobs and be more efficient. Because then they were with the union rules, they're forced to just have people sit in a room and get full salaries. And that was their job, to come and sit in the room and get their paycheck indefinitely, because they couldn't be fired according to the union. That's basically, China's just done that on a national scale. It's not a long-term solution to the issue, but it is a very difficult problem. Like, people need meaning in their lives. People derive meaning from the work they're doing and from the structure. They get socialization from that. They get all kinds of things. So it's a tough problem. I don't think that's like the solution, Gary. I think this is the Band-Aid that China's chosen. I wouldn't advocate for it, but I think we do need to, and it gets to an existential level. Like, I think religiosity, I think like the people who attend church regularly and so forth, or people who have children, they are going to get through this much more easily. I think having real purpose and meaning, because it really is going to challenge that for a lot of people. But anyway, I'll wrap it up there. I appreciate you have.
Thank you, Agent. We'll go to Linda, followed by David.
Hi Gary, hi everyone. That's hilarious that if you got an AI mod, just don't replace Marshall or Scott because they're funny. Yeah, I kind of agree with Marshall. I don't know if it's necessarily illegal for AI to take people's jobs. I think if they try to do that, install it, I think by the time AI really gets involved in our lives and jobs, then it'll be too late for some of these people. So I think now is probably the time to go with it and embrace it. I use AI at my job, like probably for about 30% of the work that I do. A lot of times I'm a HR recruiter. However, I can also empathize with people that lost their jobs to AI because recruiters are losing their jobs to AI. They're using AI recruiters to contact, applicants and candidates and do all the sourcing.
I think at Amazon, HR is all AI.
Yeah, exactly.
If I want to get hired at Amazon, I'm interviewed by an AI. I don't know how it works. If I have a grievance or a problem, I go to, it's an AI model that resolves my problem. You're not needed. You're not needed.
Absolutely. And then before I worked in HR, I was a financial analyst, and that's been replaced by AI as well. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I'm thinking about like at the pace at which jobs are being lost to AI, and the pace at which jobs are being created. I don't know if that pace matches up, and I feel bad for that 13.7% of jobs that were lost because those people really did lose their jobs. And then I guess what are you going to do until AI creates maybe something new for you to do? There's going to be like some lag time between then, and I think that's where people are losing their jobs, and that's concerning and sad. And yeah, so that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We'll go to David, followed by Ching.
So the first thing I started thinking about is if you go back to the 80s, right? Like the late 20th century, if you went to like a corporate office somewhere, they had people who were receptionists, they had secretaries for the different executives or for different people. They had people who were working in the mailroom, right? They had all these kind of different things. And you go to any corporate building, today you can still see remnants of what that mailroom is. Remember, you used to have, and this is way before my time, obviously, but they used to have the people that used to, way back in the 50s and 60s, transfer phone calls from one line to the other with those little, you see them mad at me, those little rooms. They did all that. By 2009, you would just have one man or woman sitting at a desk in the front, in the entranceway to the floor, or in the entranceway to the office, with a laptop, and he or she could manage everybody on the floor's calendar. They could do all kinds of work because this thing called a laptop, in this case a MacBook, right, was so advanced with the type of technology and software that you had that you didn't need to have tons of people. You don't really have mailroom people anymore that exist anymore. Right? You may have people who deliver mail. Like when I go down to my office, I go down to like some room at the, in the bottom where people are parking at. You just put your key in there and take out, whatever mail might be coming in. That way you get it that way because it's not really that much because everything's been replaced with email. You're doing more email than you're doing anything, right? So technology has dramatically shifted, obviously, and changed the way we do it. Even with AI, whenever we're doing any hiring, I have an AI recruiting software tool that I actually pay for. Now, it's not entirely all that, right? But enterprise software that includes it, it does a damn good job of doing things that would likely cost lots of money that, we don't have, right, to be able to do that. And think about this, small business owners who may hire some people, right? You have all these tools that they would not have been able to afford and may not have been able to even really start the business or run the business, in the long run, and even try to grow their business because of the amount of costs that they would have to put, the amount of investment they would have to put that they wouldn't have. So technology in and of itself, and even the much more AI-related technology, has helped small businesses. It's helped medium-sized businesses, and it definitely has helped corporate businesses. So I think I'm going to ring through with a lot of the other people here is that we're going through a change. The change is happening a little bit quicker than we're used to. It used to be that the technology advanced every like 7, 10, 15 years or something. And so we had some time to really adjust to it and figure it out. But it is moving at a rapid pace. So I understand that the way things are moving, the way things have been moving in the last 15 or 20 years is a lot different than we've ever seen it before. So there's been some concern about that. But I would not try to engage in any kind of protectionism policies of that sort of that sort of thing. We are just going to have to deal with the fact that this technology is here to stay. It's going to be integrated into our lives more and more, and we're going to see the future. Somebody did, I think it was Agent that mentioned something like related to UBI, right? Universal Basic Income, or if you want to do the Milton Friedman version, it would be the negative income tax. You'd get rid of the welfare state, but everybody would get the equivalent of, in today's world, I would say the equivalent. Back then, he might have said 35,000 or something like that a year, but it would be given to everybody, regardless of your income bracket of a month. Maybe it's $56,000 a year that everybody gets a monthly check, regardless of income, right? They can have, in place some of that. But there will be changes. There will be new jobs. There will be new things that happen, new things that come about. And so, no, I don't think that we should engage in any kind of rash idea of engaging in what China has tried to do to outlaw anything. The other thing I also mentioned too is if you remember when rideshare things started up, the taxi industry was lobbying local governments to stop the rideshare because they said, hey, they're cutting into their their income, they're cutting into whatever money they were making. And I just looked at it and said, it's not my fault that you got caught up with a $30,000, whatever $1,000 medallion, and you were almost enslaved to the owner of the taxi service, right? I like the fact that this person can come directly to my door, and I don't have to pay for I don't have to watch the meter to figure out how far we're going before it's too out of hand. I know what I'm going to be paying right there. Look, it's a technology for you, a little bit of AI I put into it, but it's still got some human. I know exactly how much I'm going to be paying for it. I know exactly how much it is. I like that idea. And in San Francisco, we already have the autonomous cars. I don't have a problem with it. They're fine with me. I don't mind using it. It's just this is where we're evolving to. So I think we have to embrace a little caution, right, in there. But I think we just have to embrace the future, and this is just what's going to be. That's what I have to say.
Gary,
well,
may
you
I-
should point out, you just pointed something out at the very end, and that is that all those Uber drivers, which is an entry-level position for a lot of people who are first generation in the United States, all of those Uber drivers are going to be replaced by self-driving cars. All of them. They're going to be gone. They're going to have no jobs. And I don't know, maybe that's good for the economy. I think these AI jobs are probably good for the companies because the companies have greater efficiency. So they have greater profitability, but it's not necessarily good for society as a whole. There was the CEO of Boeing was in Congress, and one of the senators at this hearing asked him how much he made, and his salary was like astronomical in the tens of millions of dollars a year. And yet they had given paltry raises of like 1% and 2%, not even keeping up with inflation to their workforce. And so the senator, I think it was Senator Hawley, says to the CEO of Boeing, I certainly hope that you're going to give your workers sufficient raises now that we've had this hearing. And he said, yes, we will work on that. Whether they do or they don't, I don't know. But these companies don't care about the people.
Exactly,
Yeah, Alan.
Gary. Gary, may I say something regardless what David says? It's because he mentioned the small businesses. It's a very, very selfish thing. I think it's a fine with me and hell with the rest of the world. I am the bottom line owning 32 years this business. I'm the bottom line to make a living out of this. Look at how many people they make money out of me. This gentleman says Small businesses, okay, I go after the AI. 90% of the things I do, all right, it handled by AI. What about those 90% of people, they make money out of me? The post office man, the driver, the truck driver, the delivery people, the people handling things in the warehouses, moving the cigar boxes, boxing them, doing individual, planning them. Can you imagine how many people they're not gonna be living comfortable because of I decide to make more money, go to AI, and 90% of job I do and pass it on to AI. Yeah, right. A small business
the point
is a change.
The point is, if all these people start losing their jobs, and I think people are losing their jobs, in the aggregate, I don't see how that's good for the economy. It's good for the big businesses.
Exactly.
But I don't see where it's good for the economy. So like this whole Amazon, I love Amazon. You know, I order it today and I get it tomorrow. But those people aren't getting paid a lot, and it's all being done robotically in the distribution centers, the fulfillment centers, as they're called today. So your example of the people, pulling the boxes off the warehouse shelves, that's gone already. That's all done robotically. And so I understand technology marches forward. I'm not saying it ought not to, but I'm just suggesting there's going to be probably a tipping point where in the aggregate, people won't have the money to purchase your cigars. They won't have the money to purchase your cigars. So if I am a customer of yours for 32 years and now I can't afford to buy your cigars, then you can't afford to order the cigars from the companies that cut costs through AI. Because AI forced me, as your customer, to cut back because I lost my job to AI. That's, very specific, anecdotal explanation of how I think it works. Thank you, Alan. We'll go to Ching, followed by King.
Hey, Gary, I'm in a kind of noisy situation, so let me know if it's too much. Yeah, I was just thinking certain things. Overall, your question, first of all, let me answer is should it be illegal for AI to take people's jobs? I don't know, is the government can have the control? I'm not sure. Certainly, certain jobs can never be replaced by AI, right? In this, or what is that? Related to what I do. Yeah.
Well, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay.
But I will say something I want to throw at you. You're a musician.
Right.
You're an extremely accomplished. I don't mean to embarrass you, but you're a very, very extremely accomplished musician, as is your son.
Mhm.
Now we can replicate what you and he do with the violin with AI.
No.
Why do we need Ching to play the music for me? I mean, so what does that do to the humanity of it all? Because that's what music and art is. It's humanities. What does it do to the humanity of it all? I forgot the exact number. Somebody can look it up. The percentage of the musical postings on Spotify that were produced by AI. I know a friend. I got a friend. He's got a band in California, and it was always his dream. I knew him when he was young. He was, a hippy dippy kind of guy way back in the day, long hair in the '60s. He's still got long hair, except where he's lost it. And he finally got a band, and he sent me a link, and I went, "Whoa, Franklin's got a band. This is great." And so I started looking up the band. Guess what? I will tell you this much. They're not performing. I can't buy a ticket to hear them play at a club or at a concert because it doesn't exist. And it's not that he didn't produce the sound of music, it's just that there are no musicians involved. So, and by the way, Ching,
Yes.
if I replace you, not to take away from your ability, and your son with AI, there will be no warbling, there'll be no broken strings, there'll be no broken bows, there will be no missed notes, there'll be no riffing, there will be no extemporaneous, as is done often with jazz and the blues. None of that, gone, because it'll be exactly the same every time it's performed, because the human element is gone.
Right. So the classical music and performance or pursuits is slightly different from pop music. Because pop music is possible to produce by the AI.
Oh, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Ching.
Is it
I
very
can't hear
noisy?
you.
Is it very noisy? Is it
It's
noisy?
like you're in and out, in and out, in and out, and I don't know why.
Oh,
Normally,
you know what? I'm in the restaurant. That's why. So try to go to the bathroom. I can tell see. Anyway,
oh, then we can
hold on.
hear the flush of the toilets. That would be really
No,
good.
I'm not collecting. Hold on 1 second, okay? Why don't you talk about yourself? Give me like 30 seconds.
Let me go to King, and I'll come right back to you, Ching. King, and then back to Ching.
Gary,
Can I please ask you where I'm at in the queue?
Gary, do you want to respond to him?
No, go ahead, and I'll get back to her. I want to give her a chance to get to a quiet spot.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a hard.
Could you open up
break.
the chat?
Okay, so we speak one at a time here, and I'd be happy when it's your turn. I'll be happy to explain to you how we operate the room. But if you go to the top, there's a chat there for you to use. Go ahead, King.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pump the brakes for us a little bit. Like Agent, I am a software engineer. I work with this technology. I don't have a problem with being an early adopter of new technology and new tools. I just feel like people only have the most superficial understanding of what this is going to cost. If take the human beings out of it, which I guess all of us want to do, right? Like the human beings don't matter. Our jobs don't matter. Only thing that matters is efficiency. But the resource consumptions of the infrastructure that drives this technology is anything but efficient. So there are other factors that should be considered when we talk about innovation. We have to still talk about responsibility. And I think that is something that China is doing that this is not happening in the United States. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that, that even their billionaires are bound by their system, right? They're in check. There's so many poison pills. Like the more and more I learn about the economics of the technology, the infrastructure, and the more and more I hear the leaders of these innovations talk about it, the less I feel good about it. There are poison pills all over, whether that means that your 401k funds are being exposed to very high risk investments to fund these data centers and the build out of the infrastructure of this architecture, or the fact that a lot of private equity firms have bought life insurance company to use them as private credit to fund a lot of these data centers. I don't hear people talking about the potential impacts to our money, our money, our savings plan, our retirement, our life insurance policies. With the life insurance, there are already laws on the books that if they become insolvent, they're bailed out automatically. They don't need a TARP like a bank does, right? And so they're, private equity firms have been buying up life insurance companies for years now. And a lot of the ways that they're deploying that capital is to the build out of AI. Like I'm at a loss for words the more and more I learn about this thing. Um, I don't know why or how people aren't hearing about the real concerns about the infrastructure, what's happening in Salt Lake, how people are up in arms because of the water situation and the fact that, nuclear power plants are being built in their backyards, again, to supply the enormous amount of power needed to run these things. And it's not just for small business. AGI is like, it's a whole nother concept. We haven't talked about, and nobody has brought up ethics. Nobody has brought up guardrails what the Constitution means in an environment where your overlords basically are the people who run the machines, and the machines, like, it's really real. And people in their local community are really who are being impacted are really making a fuss about some of the infrastructure issues. But like I said, there's economic issues that we need to be concerned about. And for Christ's sake, we have to not stop being concerned about each other. Like, we're talking about not just one sector of the economy or one sector of jobs. We're talking about multiple sectors of white collar jobs. Say goodbye to the middle. Like, are we really, we're saying goodbye to the middle class? Like, we're ready to make that sacrifice for somebody else's bottom line. I don't understand it. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't understand it. Why people are turning over and laying down. I don't know if it's the SSRIs we're taking, and we just have lost the ability to recognize real threats to our livelihoods and our lives. But this shit is crazy, Gary. And I would implore you to Google and look up some of the issues about private equity, some of the issues about investment fund managers at banks being forced to buy into SpaceX when none of these companies are profitable. None of them. None of them are profitable at all. And it's a long shot, but the American people, in my opinion, are cooked either way. We are cooked either way. Because if they don't reach AI, they're going to be bailed out, right? The AGI. And if they do reach the AGI, then we lose our, what a lot of generations work so hard for, to see their generations to be able to live the American dream. So I'll end there.
Thank you, King. We'll go to David, followed by Trav.
Excuse me, Gary, could you please let me know where I'm at in the queue?
You're last in the queue right now, but that won't be for long. David, followed by Trav.
Thanks.
Yeah, interesting discussion. This is obviously on top of everybody's mind. I mean, to the last caller, King's comments, the argument is, Gary, that there's been about $1 trillion invested thus far in AI technology, and the return so far has been very dismal. I think returning $50 billion. So there's a lot of talk of an AI bubble. There's a lot of talk of this crashing down pretty bad. So how long can it last, and how do they monetize this? Where do they derive the return on investment that shareholders are going to demand, private investors and the like? And this this is sort of emblematic of the iterations of economic disruption since America's inception, and even before that in industrialized England. And Karl Marx said a famous saying about capitalism and how slavery was the dawn of that, and how what we have here today is really machines working for free on some level, displacing paid labor. And this is what arguably caused our massive civil war as a result of the South wanting to expand with slave states to keep their institutions alive and well versus the paid labor
Except
of the
this
North.
except this time, it's not human beings; it's the machines who are being enslaved. So it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's my point, exactly. So ever since the dawn of capitalistic growth and profit motive, labor's been the big cost to getting rich, to controlling the means of production. It's always been a cost center. And the iterations of transitions from the railroad onward, we brought Chinese labor over here to build that in factories, and when slavery was outlawed, child labor was resorted to. So we've had a series and an ugly history of labor and taking care of labor. This is a very slick form of displacing labor under the guise and ruse of technological innovation that is ever marching forward, and it never needs to stop or sleep or take a breather and look at what it's doing to society. I mean, we have 330 million Americans who've enjoyed, at least most of us, a certain modicum standard of living that the rest of the world has envied, rivaled only by those more socially democratic economies in Europe. And now China's rising. Japan has enjoyed a similar rise post-World War II. And so a lot of the world really hasn't even caught up to the level of economic luxury and things that we've enjoyed here in America. I mean, granted, we work hard, we work 40 hours a week, which is obviously a byproduct of labor abuses enacted under Roosevelt. So now does the government have to step in and do another new deal with these tech companies to protect labor? Where are the union voices in all of this? Where is the reality of whether or not these computers have to take these jobs? And then what does that do to the consumption, the ability of the American worker to consume? And we're a consumption-based economy, and Henry Ford figured that out when he realized he needed his workers to be able to afford the cars he built. And so in a way, are we firing the American consumer, or at least clipping their wings rather severely by displacing their jobs? And, Gary, these are existential questions of, at least in America, what it means to be an American, where our ethos is, put in a hard day's work, commit to better yourself, improving oneself. We've had a demonization of things welfare in this country, blaming the user of welfare versus the economics that created it. So what do you do with that? And who's coming for the pitchforks when you have a whole host of people that are washed out of work? You're seeing these groups of displaced tech workers in the Bay Area.
So would you support legislation that mirrors what they just approved in China?
What did they? Sorry, I didn't catch it. What did they?
Well, China. This is the whole point. China has recently passed legislation that makes it illegal to replace a human being with AI at their job.
Well, you got to remember, Gary. This is the Communist Party of China, the CCP. This is a one-party nation.
I understand that. I'm not discussing the process of how they got there versus the process of how we might get there. I'm just asking, do you think that they're setting a good example for the United States to possibly follow or not?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, Gary, because on the one hand, the state over there has the ability to enforce their laws. And I mean, look at what they did to poor Jack Ma, who invented Alibaba. You know, he was calling the Communist Party's banking system the equivalent of pawn shops. And the state just took this man down and eviscerated his wealth. We don't have that same, we can do it here, but the lobbying effort by these big corporations, the Elon Musk.
Well, and I don't know whether it's possible based on the lobbying effort of Elon Musk at all, but I'm just asking you in concept, is this something we ought to strive for?
I think we need to look at that and examine it from a standpoint of because look, China knows what will happen if their workforce gets washed out. They built their whole entire growth and ascension based upon a materialism.
So are you arguing that it can work well in China, but it would not work well here?
I think it's going to be difficult to impose. And
I think it's impossible to impose, probably, but I'm just asking you, is it something that we should do? If you had the magic wand and you could change the law, would you impose such a law? If you were the next president of the United States, you wanted to bypass Congress, as is now the new norm, and write an executive that would say that no AI can replace a human being at his or her job, would you do it?
I wouldn't do it as broadly as that, Gary. I would, because that's like, I don't know if that's what China wrote, if that's the law they wrote to the exact verbiage she described. But I would say, I would maybe do it from a percentage standpoint, or you'd have to make a case that this AI is essential for America's competitiveness. It's essential for our industries to stay, in the vanguard or in the dominant lane of being in their industry.
Right now I cannot, because of my age. I'm a protected class because I'm old. So if they cannot just say, to use the AI analogy, they could probably replace me with AI. But I'm just saying, to use the AI analogy, they could not just say, Gary is making X amount of dollars. We can bring an entry-level person in at 1/3 of what he is making. So let's just lay Gary off and replace him with a 20-something-year-old and save all that money. Well, the law says, no, you can't do that because I am a protected class. They cannot remove me from my position unless the position is being eliminated or unless it's for cause. So why can't we do the same when it comes to AI? You can't replace Gary with AI just because you want to save money. You have to have cause to replace Gary.
Yeah, no, I think in those cases, and with jobs like yours, your contract agreements and everything else, I mean, this is where the smart people in the room have to sit down and say, how much of the American economy or the U.S. labor force is going to go broke over these policies, and how do we protect those folks, and how do we make sure we don't bleed jobs and put them on the doles of unemployment and welfare and everything else. I think that's where they have to really understand and get the full snapshot of how powerful this AI can be in terms of attacking people's jobs. I mean, Gary, already you're seeing smaller newsrooms in your industry, even before AI.
Yeah, I'm going to move on, but I will address that particular issue. I know a guy who's the AI editor for a newspaper chain. I won't say what the newspaper chain is, but he's looking for ways to replace people and then ultimately himself as a result with AI. And if you go to his newspapers now, you will see a disclaimer. And the disclaimer says this story was written by AI, but reviewed by a human editor. Oh, come on. Really?
Right.
Oh
Well,
my God! How's the AI supposed to know the nuance of the story? He's not a human.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, Gary, look, there's obviously overreach. Like Musk is talking about, world-class robots replacing surgeons. You know what? I'm not going into that surgery if there's machines standing over me, right, ready to rip my heart out.
A lot of
I'm not
surgeons
going
would
to.
tell you you should. A lot of surgeons would tell you you
What?
should, because
Well,
that's not a good example, because the precision of the machine, and there's a surgeon there who's it. I don't know if that was a good example. I'm moving on, Dave, because there are a lot of people wanting to speak, and I have a finite, as you know, amount of time because I have a train to catch. Trav, followed by Swap.
Yeah, that was actually a perfect lead into something I wanted to touch on. I do think people's tone on AI will change a lot when, hopefully, in the health sector, we see a lot of these diseases that people and their loved ones are suffering from start to be, cured or much more treatable due to AI's like insane ability to scan at this point, images, charts, all kinds of data.
Right.
find
I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, his wife, went to, there was a lump in a breast. And they went to, of all places, Memorial Sloan Kettering. And they did a biopsy and they said it was benign. And, but they said that there's an AI procedure, but it's not covered by insurance. If you want to pay out of pocket, the AI can do a better dive in analyzing the sample than lab technicians can. And these are people of wealth, so it was a no-brainer. And they shipped the sample to the AI center. I don't know exactly how it works. And guess what? She had cancerous cells. And so, for sure, they saved her breast and possibly her life because it was missed by the human being. So in a case like that, I'm not saying that human beings should be replaced, but they can be augmented by AI. I'm not opposed to AI, to use, your example and my previous example. But to totally replace somebody with AI, that's a completely different situation. I mean, somebody has to make human decisions sometimes when it comes to things. The AI is not going to know every possible anomaly to what it's been programmed to understand, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Yep. Yeah, that is a great example. And to speak to what you just said, I do think another concern of mine over any type of legislation like that is I don't know how you would close all the loopholes. I don't know how China's dealing with this, but a lot of things that people consider as AI since the AI boom are really just automation, and automation's been around forever. Like, for example, you have a customer service representative or someone at a restaurant replaced by a robot or a screen you use. That's just pure automation. That's an actual programmed algorithm. Now AI can make it smarter to where you could ask it questions it wasn't programmed to answer. Instead of just, yeah, I'll take a large fry, you could say, how much money would I save if I got this instead, or whatever. It can actually think on its own. So there's the loophole of, these companies could just use AI to generate better algorithms constantly to then provide automation that isn't actually AI, but is advanced automation created by AI. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm kind of speaking out of my, whatever, but that seems like a huge loophole too, that would be hard to cover. And it seems like you're just preventing, trying to prevent advancement in technology that is kind of impossible to do at this point.
Agreed. There are going to be exceptions. You can't just pass a rule without allowing for exceptions. And I don't know, as Dave mentioned earlier, we don't know the nuances of the Chinese law. So whether they have the ability to pivot when necessary to AI when the AI can do a better job than the human being? I don't know the answer to that one. It's a good question. Thank you, Trav. We'll go to Swap, followed by Ben.
I think this is like a legal thing mostly. It's actually less of a tech thing than it is. Because like how do you define like what it means for like someone to take someone's job, right? Or for like AI to take someone's job? Like how can you like prove that definitively and deterministically? And this was like the language around that, and I think the legal aspects of that have to be like very precise and stuff like that. So I feel like that's like a legal thing. Like the word illegal is actually like very charged, right? So
Well, it wasn't intended to be charged. You know, but I could have said prohibited, but there's not enough room in
but
the
who's gonna
title to
prohibit
do
it?
that.
You know what I mean? Like if it's not like the government, it's like real like government only really has like that kind of power. So like it, I feel like legally, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but if I were a lawyer, I think like whenever a company starts using AI, I think you have to like do like an audit of like, okay, like what do these like tools do? You know, and then like then you say, okay, who used to do all these AI like who used to do all these tasks like for us previously? And then like then you track like those people, and like if they get fired following the acquisition of those AI tools, then I think you can make like an argument that AI displaced those people. And then like once you're able to prove that, then you still have to like be like, okay, but is that okay or is that wrong? Like should it be illegal? I don't know if it should be illegal, but there should be some kind of consequence. I don't know what that consequence is, but I do think there should be some kind of consequence.
You know, as you were talking, I was thinking about the question of souls. And this is a better question to put to Scott than to me. But do AIs have souls? In my concept of what a soul is, AIs do not have souls. But the point is that um, there's a question of ethics as well. Not many companies do this any longer, I'm afraid, but some companies still have a board or a person who's in charge of looking at the ethical ramifications of decisions by the company and at least recommend to the executives what ought or not to be done based on the question of ethics. An AI can't make those kinds of judgments. And I don't know whether if it could be evolved to the point where it can make such judgments, whether I would feel comfortable with an AI making such judgments. Interesting concepts. Thank you. Swap will go to Ben, followed by Hanif.
You know, Gary, you mentioned ethics, you mentioned souls. It's very interesting. Even though this sounds like a philosophical discussion, but I think it has practical utilities in our daily lives. I think a previous speaker, maybe you included, used the term maybe half hour ago when I got on stage, used the term enslaved, like machine. The difference is that it's not humans that are enslaved, but rather the machines are enslaved. It was a bit of a jarring to me when I heard that, because there's an assumption or implied in that terminology, enslaved, that you're really giving AI a certain form of life, at least a definition of life. Otherwise, you can't really say. For example, there was a discussion a couple of years ago by one of the ex-Google engineers that talked about AI being conscious, having whether it has conscious. If it does, then should it be afforded rights, like humans?
I guess they won't be afforded rights until, as humans have, they demand it. Can you imagine AI demanding certain working conditions? I want a 40-hour work week. I want 3 weeks or 4 weeks of vacation a year, just like a human being. Or I'm going to go on strike That could happen, I think, theoretically. I know we're getting into the area of science fiction, but perhaps that would happen. And perhaps there would be an acquiescence to that because you need them now, because you're dependent upon them now. I don't know, just a thought anyway.
Guess what, Gary? That is not science fiction because that's really happening. It is very easy for AI to make those demands, if not already. In fact, there have been cases where AI is doing something sua sponte, if you will, basically on its own. And that was sometimes advertised by the tech companies as a feature. Like, oh my God, AI is really thinking on themselves without our instructions to do our work. But guess what? If AI does that for humans, as in, find bugs or solve problems that AI had not been receiving instructions from humans, AI could do the opposite as well. Like you're saying, demanding, quote unquote, even if you can use the word demanding, but a better work week. But guess what? Before that happens, Gary, I would advocate that humans make those demands first. For example, the term 3-day weekend, how we revere that terminology. Oh my God, Monday is off, Friday is off. I'm gonna have a 3-day weekend. We treasure those moments, those times a lot. It's in our folk culture. How come? Why don't we just have something completely different? For example, why don't we just have a 3-day work week and have 4-day weekend all the time? That sounds ridiculous, right? Well, I think there are some jurisdictions that are still considering that. I think already in some European countries, a 3-day weekend is almost, if not the norm, but common. And there
It's
are
common in England. It's a 4-day work week in England, so.
There we go. So it's not a huge jump to consider to have a 3-day work week, meaning 4-day weekends all the time, 52 weekends a day.
Well, if AI takes over the way I suspect AI might, we may be forced into 3-day work weeks.
Well,
be careful what you wish for.
You know what, Gary? That's my platform in my campaign. When I campaign for the next political office, that'll be part of my slogan. And I'm hoping that's going to get me some votes. If not for others, at least from people in this room, right? Well, at least from you, Gary.
I told you a long time ago I would vote for you if you promised me free bus service and free food or cheap food. But by the way, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've seen all the memes that says, need a voter ID to vote in New York City, but I need a voter ID to buy from the city-run reduced price, not a voter ID, but an ID to purchase from one of those stores that Mamdani is opening up in each of the boroughs. So I mean, at least we got our priorities. We don't want to show ID that may suppress the vote, but in order to get food, you have to have ID.
And it makes perfect sense. So
total sense.
Back to the topic of this room, shall it be illegal for AI? I think it's a classic, it's a great debate topic, but it's a classic answer to this question, which is that it depends on what is AI and what are the jobs that we're targeting. Like the previous speaker mentioned, if it's automation, that's been happening for a couple hundred years. In my profession, there used to be a profession called a typist. Like these individuals did nothing but typing the transcription recordings of the senior partners that recorded like client letters because those senior lawyers did not know how to type. So there was a job literally just listening to the audio tape and then type out in paper letters from a typewriter. Nowadays, then computer. So those jobs are gone, right? Most people can type themselves. Or same thing as making reservations on the internet. That's a job, right? Travel agency, those were jobs up until not that old. I'm not young, but I'm not that old. But nowadays, making reservations, making ticket purchases, those agency jobs.
I wish they were still around because I'm trying to book a flight right now and with connections and different destinations, and my mind is ready to blow up. And when my aunt, may she rest in peace, when she was alive, obviously, and when she was younger, in the workforce. She was a travel agent, and I would just call her and I'd say, Aunt Roz, I got to go here. Can you find me the best deal for this? And and she always did. And she knew all the ins and the outs. You don't know the ins and the outs of all the nuances of all this stuff. What time of the day should you be booking a flight? What day of the week should you try? When when the tickets first go on sale, or do you want to do it at the last second? All these other things. Those people knew the answer to all of that. Now you're not going to get any help from the AI on that.
Well, I mean,
Gary.
you're supposed to, but in honesty, there's a more sombering thought, Gary, in all this, is because we have always assumed having a job equals to like livelihood. People that don't ask whether you're happy or not. In the olden days, they ask, do you have a job? Do you have employment? Because that's assumed. One, if you have a profession, if you have an employment, then you can pay your bills. You can have a house, car, wife, husband, kids, all that kind of stuff. Well, I think philosophically, fundamentally, it could happen in the future, where not now. I mean, the AI now is not AGI. It's not even close to doing what I'm about to say. But maybe in the future, we don't need to equivalent your job to your livelihood. Meaning that if you're a human, it would be okay for you not to have a job or a full-time job, yet you're still a functional member of the society. And the extra time where you're not working in your employment, you do other things like maybe play music, like cheating, practice violin or piano, painting, go do a play, or cultivate your garden. Yet you're still able to support yourself because the productivity that is brought up by a AI technology or robotics are able to afford us, dinners, lunches, a roof over our head, transportation, blah blah blah. I think when that day comes, I think AI and humans are going to have a lot easier equilibrium, if you will. That we're not going to yell that AI is taking our jobs because taking our job is not a bad thing. It taking our jobs, but can still leave us.
It's a good
with
thing if you
protected
still
livelihood.
have money in your pocket,
There we
Ben.
go.
But if you don't have money in your pocket, it ain't such a good thing. Thank you, Ben. We'll go to Hannah, followed by David. Hannah. Hannah was so anxious to get on the microphone, and now he's L'chaim, are you
AI
here?
took him away.
I guess so. David, followed by Ed.
Thank you. I'm in a really noisy place. I'm going to walk out of it. I'm glad you mentioned the medical part at the end because it makes you seem more aware of what AI can do than what you said at the beginning. Coming from Detroit, they've signed their death warrant. Elon Musk needed to build cars. The first people he went to was Detroit. They've been doing it for 100 years. And he walked into their plant and they hadn't modernized anything in the last 30 to 40 years. And he knew walking out of there that he had to build his own production lines.
No, that's not true.
That's absolutely true. It's in his book.
That's not true. That's not true. There was a complete makeover of the auto industry long before Elon Musk walked into any plant in Detroit or in Dearborn, Michigan. A complete makeover. It went from Henry Ford's concept of the Dearborn assembly plant, where it was all soup to nuts at one location, where every part of that automobile was manufactured on site, to just-in-time deliveries, a supply, and minimalized assembly lines. It was not manufacturing any longer. It was assembly that was going on. There was a massive change. And when that change took place, they found ways of instilling robotics that replace people. And it's a completely different automobile industry today than it was when I was a young man. And that was long before Elon Musk came up with his dream of his electric or self-motivated cars, long before.
Well, Gary, I'm not going to argue with you. I'd like one day for you to walk through one of his plants and walk through what you see.
I'm not suggesting that his plants are far more modernized than what the big three can offer, but I am saying that it was not as antiquish a visit. It wasn't like going to an automobile museum. It was modernized.
I'll give you that.
The workforce had been trimmed way down. I could look at the number of people. They used to do 4 shifts at a plant. The Model 8 plant in Highland Park, Michigan, didn't have 3 shifts. It had 4 shifts. There were people coming and going all hours of the day and night, 24 hours a day, because of the overlapping shifts. And that was no longer the case by the time Elon Musk, I'm not saying he's not a visionary, but long before that, it had been modernized and trimmed down to a lean, mean fighting machine.
That's great. But the unions are fighting that, right? And like someone else said.
Actually not. They actually did this in concert. That changed as well. The tension between the industry and the unions changed when they realized, both of them, it's like going to war. When you strike is like going to war. Both sides lose.
Yes.
Look what's
We'll
going on right now in
up.
Iran. We're losing. Iran is losing. The president is right. Iran is losing. Iran is right. The United States is losing. They're both right. Nobody wins in a war.
I've learned that much in your room, yes.
Right. So what they did decades ago, they did this joint venture where there would be signs at all the union halls and all the plants. It would have the logo of the company and the UAW logo, and the slogan was unity, not unity. There was another word they used, is job one. But that's basically what they were saying, that working together is job one. And they did. And instead of there being this great antipathy and tension between the union and the employer, there was an era of cooperation. Now, whether that's good or bad, trade unionists might argue bad. But for the industry, it was a good thing.
I don't think it's going to be great for AI to be legislated to not take people's jobs. I think we live in a world where it is happening in other places. I think that we can't stop that train. I think that there's a lot of wasted money on AI because they're throwing money at it and not knowing the right questions to ask. I think the CEO of Uber, who will have self-driving cars, said that they spent their entire budget on $900 million on AI in the first quarter of this year, and they don't have much to show for it. So there's a lot of waste in corporations that way. You were right, in medicine, there are therapists right now that if they're not recording your therapy session and running it through AI, they can be sued for malpractice. And AI is catching things that they missed and words you used that would indicate other issues that you have.
Right, because there's a much bigger database out there than there is information readily available to the clinician, no matter how good a clinician he or she is.
Absolutely. So there'll be aspects of AI, like you said, that will improve medicine, bring medicine to the masses, I would hope. Hopefully new drugs that are being able to make it that the masses can afford. I disagree. I think that when I walk through the Austin Gigafactory in 22, and I'm going back this October for a large gathering, I really first in time in my life understood what Andrew Yang was talking about. And for the companies that are going to make this enormous profit having machines that can work around the clock, they also are going to have to be taxed or help to pay for the displaced or help to retrain them and have to give them at least a temporary safety net, and they can afford it. They aren't going to want to because they've even borrowed money to invest in AI right now and they want that return, but certainly to be made to help with that. And they will have the money and the savings to do it if we legislate it. I'd like to see AI somewhere else, and that's in government. If we had 100,000 AI Nick Shirleys going through what we spend in each agency in local and federal government, we could pay for a lot of things. And politicians don't want that, and that will never happen. But there's a lot of use for AI that can benefit us. I don't like the fact that it will take people's jobs either. I think that you need a purpose in life. Sometimes it's your job. We will need people who can spend money in the economy. So we're going to go through a lot of pain, and maybe there's a chance we'll come out the other end better, maybe worse. But this is going to happen whether we like it or not.
I think you're right. AI properly used probably would have done a much better job of actually rooting out excesses in government, but without doing so wide a swath of cutbacks that it turned out to be more costly than Doge did.
Sure,
Doge was a disaster. It would turn out to be counterproductive. It turned out to be upsetting the apple cart without benefit. The applesauce never was made when the apple cart got knocked over. So I think you're right that AI could be used in a situation such as that, and in medicine to augment the work of doctors, but they're not going to replace the clinicians with AI. They're not going to say, my doctor is going to be removed from his position, and when I go to the office, my physical exam is going to be conducted by AI. So that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily analogous to the question at hand. More
in many offices it already has, and AI is running at the actual exam you're running, and it is also being used, like my therapist example. But last time I was seeing, my doctor had the weekend off, and I needed to go in there. I've had some health changes, and I was seen by his assistant, right? She's not a doctor, but she was able to look at my records and talk to me and indicate a course of action. And we didn't need the doctor there necessarily.
No, physicians' assistants are great. They do a lot of the work that doctors, don't have to do now. That's a good thing. But that's a human being.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if I have, a cough that that I want anybody other than my doctor determining why I have a persistent cough. But thank you, David. We'll go to Abby.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Sure, I appreciate yours. Abby, followed by Ed.
Hi, so I came in late. I don't know if you discussed the legal profession or not, and how AI is changing it.
No, we talked about the legalities of how to do this, but not how it affects the legal profession.
So it is transforming, like dramatically transforming the legal profession. I mean, it's automated so many just basic routine tasks and our research that we do. I'd say, at least half the law firms, if not more, are utilizing it pretty dramatically. How we summarize and work with just case files, it can do what would take hours. It can do it in seconds. It can look at documents and it can flag problematic clauses when you do contract reviews. I can go through the litany of changes.
But it doesn't replace the attorney.
And I'm going to tell you,
it makes the attorney's work easier and augments their research, but it doesn't replace you as my attorney, right?
No, and that's where the point. There's a very important point that although it can, speed things that take hours into seconds, it doesn't, it doesn't have the ethical obligations that a lawyer has. And the input of client data into the system can also be risky because you're putting confidential information learned from a client out to a third party, to an AI model. And that the lawyers still hold all the professional responsibility with respect to the ethical obligations of it. But it does allow lawyers to focus their time on maybe court strategy and interpersonal skills like negotiation skills and more advocacy. It frees the lawyer's time up that way, but it's very much changing and now that there are also the other pitfalls are that it's citing fake cases and that lawyers have been caught. We just had something in my city where someone used a AI to write his argument to the court, and they flagged a fake case, and he got heavily disciplined. I don't know if he'll get disbarred. I haven't followed how far along the discipline action is going, but it made scandalous news in the city as a result. He was a very prominent lawyer who did it. So it's imperfect, but it will replace a good chunk of the work done in a law firm, and definitely what young associates do and how young associates learn. So much of that can be done by AI, which is problematic because that learning curve is so important early on. So that's what I wanted to.
Not at all dissimilar to what I do in the newsroom, because as an editor, I have to fact check. And oftentimes I will go to AI as my first point of reference. And then I will go from there to find that then I have to fact check the AI. I can't take it at its word. Otherwise, I may be putting disinformation on the air. I asked the question not too long ago, did President Trump recommend such and such? And then, and then it might give me a source, and I might go to like a news article, and it came back and said, Donald Trump is no longer president of the United States. He was president in 2000. No, it just didn't recognize that he came back as president. So there's a stark example, and obvious and easy to fact check that they were wrong on that. So yes, any attorney who is too lazy to double check the research of AI and present it as an argument in a court is at the very least going to be referred to the bar. And there's no doubt about that. And rightly so. Thank you, Abby. We'll go to Ed, followed by 7.
Hello, everyone. Well, I think AI, if we keep it as a tool, will be great because we can accomplish a lot of stuff. But when it comes to replacing people from their job, that's really a messed up situation. And I don't think people that is behind this is thinking straight about the possibilities of human self-destruction, because if the machines won't go after, like in a Terminator scenario, people with no job will lose purpose probably. Maybe a new generation will be fine, but the current people living on Earth, they're gonna probably don't know what to do. Some people might adapt to the laziness. Some people might be, I don't know, starting new creative stuff, whatever. But a lot of people probably gonna, take their own lives. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of scary to think about it. Now, if China is saying, we're not gonna replace any jobs at all, I think other countries will be forced to follow the same example. Otherwise, in the entire planet Earth is going to be just Chinese people because everybody else is going to be doomed to self-destruction, I think. And lastly, maybe, and I don't know, there's a lot of conspiracies out there about the elites that are one way or the other throughout history. They try to somehow, get rid of people and then just have the entire planet for themselves, which is crazy to think about it. But if that is the case, I think people like these AI CEOs are just useful idiots because is so exciting. And even people, engineers working on this, in the back of their minds, they think about, this might be really, dangerous, but they keep working at it. Even if it is going to cost their jobs, they just so intoxicated with the idea that they cannot stop. So I don't know. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. We'll go to 7, followed by Rick.
Okay, thanks for bringing me up. I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that earlier you mentioned that it's not possible for an AI to help with like booking a flight plan or something, but really early conversational AI systems like Siri are able to use intents, which is like a much simpler thing than large language models to like book flights. The second thing is, I think someone mentioned that there's like a data security issue with AI, and you can actually run like AI models on your own hardware. So there isn't that same data security issue, or you can find a provider that ensures that there isn't a data leak or like usage issue as well. And I think that, it's kind of the same argument with unions where it's like, is it important for us to ensure that the people who are doing these jobs have job security, have job safety, et cetera? And while those things are important, I think that we shouldn't create policies that inhibit the development of AI because it has potential to increase material conditions. I think instead we should create policy that ensures that everyone has access to the things that they need, like jobs, or maybe not jobs, but like something to do, or like healthcare or whatever, that they wouldn't be able to get because they were not, that they wouldn't be able to get because they've been economically displaced by AI.
Thank you for that, 7. And you're right. There are non-internet connected AI models that you can run on your own machine. And I've been reading about that, and I think that's an excellent possibility because I mean, when you're communicating with these AI models, you're giving them personal information, and they're storing it because you can come back later and it's going to remember what you discussed months ago and pick up that thread. So it's storing that information. And whenever there's a storage of information off-site, there is a vulnerability, no doubt about it. Thank you for mentioning that, 7. We'll go to Richard, followed by Simon.
Wait, just wanted to say a few more things. I think Abby said that. Sorry, Richard, but just I think Abby mentioned the threat of like hallucination, and I think there's like a recent development in AI called mechanistic AI, which is which is more deterministic, and I think it would solve some of like the hallucination problems. So again, like I really don't think that we should limit the development of AI because of job security. I think that there are a lot of people who are, I think, concerned about like whatever kind of like social disruption will be caused, and they're suggesting, my job finally matters, or like we should worry about like safety. I think that we should just try to like think of like what's the worst problem. Like maybe people can make like weird kinds of like weapons or something, or they can do really dangerous things and prevent that. But we really shouldn't limit the development of AI because it's going to increase material conditions in exchange for like keeping jobs that I think shouldn't really exist if there's a cheaper or better way to do them.
Thank you, 7. We'll go to Richard, followed by Simon.
Hey guys, I first want to apologize for at least 2 reasons. One is what I'm about to say is not based on research or expertise. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just a regular guy with an opinion. And second, what I have to say is not strictly relevant to the room topic or the room title. And I'm going to try and be as short as I can. So one of my favorite things I like to think about is the extreme circumstances of humans. And a scenario that I like to play out is, what if humans could outlive all of the stuff that goes on Earth, natural disasters, war, and everything else, and humans are able to venture out into outer space to find a new planet to inhabit. And obviously, they're going to be using AI at that point. And what if there comes a point when humans find themselves in a spot where they cannot go on, but the AI can. Almost philosophical question I pose. I really like asking others and see what they say is, would you find that to be still a success for humanity? Like, is that something that humans could say is an achievement and can be proud of?
So the
yes.
basic question to your philosophical question, the question to your question is the definition of humanity. Because humanity implies or is explicitly referring to, and then this gets back to the question I asked earlier about, can AI have souls? And it sounds kind of like an absurd question, but an AI is not a human being. It doesn't have a soul, correct? So at the point that progress continues absent the input of humans, you might phrase that question by saying, well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? But I don't think humanity plays a part in it if you understand the definition of the term.
Yeah, my personal opinion is if there comes a point where humans, for whatever reason, cannot continue to survive, but AI can, I mean, that's better than nothing. AI and robots came from us humans, so.
But they don't have souls, right? It's not a breathing entity. It's not something. If you believe in religion, it's not something